rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes just building upon a couple of points that I said I was going to talk about today. And one of them was regarding the strength and the character that Allah Subhanahu has given us. And why Ramadan is so important in understanding the power that we have and who we are. But before I do that, I want to touch on just understanding Allah Subhanahu a little more. Especially when it comes to seeing the events that we're seeing across the world, the hardship that people go through. And I'm sure I'm not talking about people necessarily in this room, but sometimes people question that why is this happening? Why is Allah allowing this to happen? And our understanding is framed in actually sometimes not knowing who Allah is. And there's two things that help explain this, or at least give us an example. One is the passing of our mother, Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha. Now when Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha passed, she passed just after 3 years that the family of the Prophet ﷺ and the entire tribe were under siege. So no food, no water, and that went on for 3 years. And she was one of the most wealthiest women of Makkah. So imagine the indignity that she had to suffer, that she couldn't buy food, she couldn't buy clothing. And the effects of that siege were so severe that it led to her blessed death. But on the outward, unlike the Prophet ﷺ, unlike Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, unlike Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, all of these people saw the achievement of Islam, i.e. they saw the conquering of Makkah, they saw the benefits of Medina, they saw the conquering of Khaybar. But our mother Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha saw none of that. In her entire life, all she saw was the starvation, was the persecution that her husband went through, Prophet ﷺ. Yet she's amongst the most successful women of humanity of the universe, the 4 of the highest ranks of Jannah. So on the outward, her death looks like, well, what should she see? Just hardship. But if you look at it from a long-term perspective, she's one of the most highest ranking women of Jannah, period. And you and I accept that. Likewise, sometimes across the world, what we're seeing, for example, in Palestine, yes, there should be a reflection for us in what we can do. But for them and their relationship with Allah is completely different. Just like the relationship between Sayyidina Khadija radiallahu anha and Allah was between her and Allah, i.e. her station and her rank. And the other thing to understand is to understand that who here is a parent? Many of you, I see mashallah, a lot of you bring your children here. Now as a parent, I don't analogize with Allah, but just for our understanding, that when your children are young, at some times you have to put them through hardship because you know that for the longer term it's better for them. So for example, if a child's not eating, some parents will do what? You'll ask the child nicely, once, twice, and they still don't eat. You do what? No one's going to put their hand up and say, I'm going to smack my child, yeah? But you force them. Now from a child's perspective, that's torture. Like, what's the parent doing to me? If a child's unwell, or they have to have an operation, they get injections or whatever it might be, from the child's perspective, you're putting them through hell. But you know as a parent that from a long-term perspective, it's for their benefit. And Allah loves us more than our parents. Allah loves us more than our parents. So He knows that whatever He's putting us through in this life, that for the longer term, is for our benefit. And so we don't always understand, just like that child doesn't understand why is mum and dad doing this to me right now. We won't always understand why Allah is doing what Allah is doing, why our circumstances are as they are. But from Allah's perspective, it's for our long-term benefit, because He loves us more than our parents. Now coming back to the second part of what I want to speak about in the few minutes that I have, is understanding the purpose as to why we're here, and who we are. Because unlike any other creation, we have a title that no other creation has, which is that we have been sent on this earth as a Khalifa, as a representative of who? Of Allah Himself. That on this earth, even the jinns don't have that stature or station. That is unique to human beings. Jinns are expected to worship Allah. Jinns have a requirement to do good, etc. They have that, we have that requirement. But to be a representative of Allah, that's unique to us. And what is a representative? A representative is any leader, any king, any prime minister, when they have a representative, a leader, an ambassador, the purpose of them is to reflect the king. It's to have the values that the king has. And for us, that is our purpose, to reflect the qualities of Allah. Allah is Al-Haq, He's the truthful, has His representatives, our job is to be truthful. Allah is just, and as His representatives, our ability, we should reflect that quality of justice. And it goes on. Every single thing or quality that Allah Azza wa Jalla has, we are expected to reflect it. And anything good in our faith is because it reflects the quality of Allah. So where does Ramadan come into this? Ramadan, and I pick, is a point that Ustad Muslim mentioned actually in the first few nights, that Ramadan, you refrain yourself from some of the most basic desires that we have, which is eating and drinking. And that's not a small thing. You know, it's one of the most basic things that humans do, constantly. If you think about when you're not fasting, you're always eating and you're always drinking, socially, whenever it is. And Allah is telling us in this month that you have this ability to refrain from the most strongest desire that you have. Ask the people of Palestine how much they're missing food and drink right now. You know, so Allah is telling us that look at your strength. But yet Allah is also telling us, and Allah doesn't talk in riddles, Allah is crystal clear, that I am not in need of your hunger or your thirst. That's not what He's expecting from us, but He is demonstrating to us that look, you yourself can testify how strong you are. And why? Because that strength that you have to refrain from eating, to refrain from drinking, to have that patience of actually, you know what, I'm not going to eat till later today, is one of the strongest qualities. That skill that you learn is literally the skill that you need for the rest of your life. To refrain from swearing, to refrain from watching pornography, whatever it might be, that is the skill that you're learning. And you're learning it hard, and you're learning it fast, and you're doing it. That's the other thing. And the other side of the coin is that you're also adopting qualities of Allah so hard and so fast, like forbearance, i.e. the ability to forbear, the ability to be patient. They go, if you can master patience, it's the root of avoiding so many other issues. Because mostly, when people swear, they do it in anger, they do it as a direct result of something. But each of you are mastering patience because you know you're avoiding food for the rest of the day. You know that and you're holding on to that. So what does that mean for you and me? If we can do that, are we taking that skill and applying it to the people around us? Because ironically, the people that will determine your Jannah or your Jahannam, your heaven or your hell, and is not the IDF in Israel, it's not Rishi Sunak. The people that will determine whether you go to heaven or hell are going to be your family, are going to be your friends and your colleagues. And that's the crazy thing. That your wife will determine whether you go to heaven or hell. Your husband will. Because it's on them, how you treat them and how they treat you is ultimately going to be the key thing. Because you are always going to be nice to strangers. That's not the issue. You're always going to be able to give charity to what's going on in Palestine. But do you give to your family? Are you the restraint that you're showing right now, that you're not eating, you're avoiding, are you showing that same restraint when your wife does something? Are you snapping at her just like that? Or are you doing what Allah does? Because we get things wrong with Allah all the time. We don't do anything He asks, but He doesn't snap at her straight away. He doesn't punish her straight away. He forbears, He holds back. Yet if any one of our children did anything, if our spouses did anything, do we just snap straight back? Or do we actually forbear and say, actually, I'm going to let this one go? Do we forgive like Allah does? One of Allah's most blessed names is Afu, the pardoner, the one that forgives unprompted. We don't even have to ask Him and He just forgives us. How much of that do we do within our circles? Because fundamentally, it's the circle that you're in the circle of your influence that is going to determine your absolute salvation. Because those are the people that you interact with the most. So inshallah on that, I'm going to conclude my 10 minutes. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Ya Ghaffar, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Allah, peace, Ya mercy, blessing, Ya Rahman, Ya Allah. Allow us to truly understand this month for what it is, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, allow us to truly reflect your blessed qualities and reflect the ikhlaq of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah, forgive us in this blessed month, Ya Allah. Allah, as we exit the 10 days of mercy and enter the 10 days of forgiveness, allow us to truly incur your forgiveness. But Allah, allow us to forgive others so that we can stand before you with some face and say, forgive us. Allow us to forgive the people that we feel have wronged us. Allow us to do that, and allow us then to stand before you and ask you for forgiveness, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, forgive us for all the sins and the mistakes that we've made, Ya Allah. Allow us to immerse ourselves in the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and allow us to truly, Ya Allah, reflect your blessed qualities. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Nabiyyin Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Ameen.